There are some times where I'm wrong about a shoe, and I think this is one of those times. This is the Hoka Carbon X3. It's time to talk about it after 100 miles. 13.45 miles, where I've used 10 of those miles as pacing practice. I'm going to be pacing a friend of mine at the Chicago Marathon coming up in just 2 weeks. So I wanted to really nail down what the marathon effort is going to feel like. And it was a perfect way to round out my testing of the Hoka Carbon X3. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe and how it's held up over the last 100 miles, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Hoka gave me for the purpose of review. However, they're not paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and they're not going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka Carbon X3. Now, the way I typically cover my 100-mile update review videos is I don't really go over the specs again, but instead I'll talk about how I've actually used the shoe and whether that's changed over time or if it's changed compared to what I thought I would be using the shoe for. And then I'll go over how the shoe's actually holding up in terms of wear and tear. So first, let's talk about how I've been using the shoe. Now, as it started out, I felt like this shoe was nice and springy. My first run in it I took for the last 10 miles of the CIM course, which was like the first weekend that I had gotten this shoe back in December. And I felt like it was a really nice and exciting update to the Carbon X2. I felt like it was softer and a little bit springier than the X2 was. And I absolutely fell in love with the knit upper. I love a good knit upper, and this is a fantastic example of how knit materials can be used in a performance shoe. It's super comfortable, fits on the foot really well, and I really enjoy it both for easier efforts and for harder marathon pace efforts as well. But something that I found with this shoe after I had done my original review of it is that I just kind of started reaching for it less and less. And part of that is because I got the shoe in December and then we hit January and February where the outsole, where there isn't a traditional rubber outsole, there's just this rubberized EVA. You're running directly on midsole foam. That made it a little bit less desirable of a winter running shoe, especially for those harder workouts in areas that might be slippery or icy. But even as temperatures warmed up and conditions dried out, I just felt like it wasn't a shoe that was exciting to wear. It felt like it was a little bit too firm for easy runs, and it just wasn't kind of exciting enough. It didn't deliver enough pop for me to want to bring for long runs or for any of my workouts. So I felt like in any situation where I might want to use the Carbon X3, I found that I'd rather either be in a really good daily trainer or I'd rather be in a different carbon plated shoe depending on whatever the run had in store for me. And so in the case where I had other options, I found myself generally picking other options. Now, I'm not going to say that this shoe doesn't work for anybody. I know that there are some of you who absolutely do love this shoe. And I think that for the people that really loved Carbon X1 and Carbon X2, the Carbon X3 is a really nice upgrade. It has a lot of that same feel. It's still very much a Carbon X shoe, but it has a lot of things that I'm realizing now tend to mean that I'm not going to love it as a marathon racer or as a marathon training shoe. There is an early stage meta rocker, that's that change in geometry of the shoe that helps the shoe roll really well, combined with a somewhat stiffer midsole, and then the plate placement, you could see it through the X down here in the midsole. The plate is sandwiched between that rubberized EVA, kind of that outsole midsole layer, and then the ProFly X, that softer foam that's up here. The plate is placed relatively low, and so when you have low plate placement and an early stage meta rocker, that usually means it's a shoe that's going to have really nice turnover, especially if it's a little bit on the firmer side, but it's going to make foams, even if they're soft, feel a little bit firmer. You do get some extra stability from that, but it just makes for a ride that I tend to not prefer. For those of you who like the kind of shoes that I tend to like when it comes to racing, the Carbon X3 is going to leave a lot to be desired. But again, if you liked versions 1 and 2, you're still going to really like version 3. Now, in terms of how the shoe actually does hold up, I think a lot of people are expecting that a shoe without any rubber on the outsole is going to be super chewed up and not really have a lot of life left in it, especially as we all kind of come to expect that super shoes or racing shoes aren't going to last as long as our regular daily trainers. But I will say that on this shoe, the Carbon X3, the outsole is holding up really well. There's a couple of spots where I'm seeing a little bit more kind of scuffing on the outsole. On my left foot, it's right underneath the pads of the foot. And then on my right foot, it's more on the lateral edge of the shoe, on the kind of the outside edge of it, and a little bit on the back right heel. But other than that, there's still a lot of like very fine detail that's etched into that outsole or that midsole outsole combo. And that tells me that the material hasn't worn down so much that it's like you're running on ball tires or anything like that. In fact, the outsole material is holding up really well. And I don't think it's something that a lot of you guys will have to worry about. As far as the upper goes, it's just as comfortable as ever. And in fact, the only time I'm really excited about the shoe is when I want to wear a knit upper shoe. And so I did enjoy putting the shoe on as I got ready for the run today. The little pull tab loop in the forefoot and this little grippy part in the heel make it really easy to slip on and off. And the knit itself is nice and stretchy while also keeping the foot securely in place during your runs. And I do hope that this knit material is something that we can see across maybe a couple other shoes in the Hoka lineup, because I do really like how comfortable it is. Overall, I feel like the Carbon X3 is a mild update to the Carbon X2. I really do like the upper, but overall, if you were looking at the Carbon X and really hoping that it would be significantly changed so that it could finally become the racing shoe that you've always wanted, X3 is not the year for you. We'll have to wait to see what happens in the next year. But if you are someone who's loved the Carbon X series from the beginning, you're definitely going to enjoy this shoe and you're going to be able to get a lot of use out of it. So those are my thoughts on the Carbon X3 after 100 miles. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to talk to you guys in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are all staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?